Paul is saying this very thing that you're trying to use to disqualify me, I'm getting to experience and boast about the power of God residing in me despite this weakness or affliction in my body. Now, what does this mean for us? Or how do we respond to this? Well, for one, what's going on, my dear soul family? It's Dallas here, and welcome back to the channel. Got another verse for you. Let's jump right into it. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. Well, 8 through 9. It says, "Concerning this, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it would leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness. Therefore, I will most gladly boast all the more about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may reside in me." All right, so the context here is the Apostle Paul is talking to the church at Corinth. This is another one of the letters he wrote, and the second letter he's doing a lot of defending of his apostleship, because there have been some false apostles, false teachers there that he called super apostles that were trying to disqualify him. So he lets them in on this story as part of the story. That's an experience that he had, but it's part of his defense of his apostleship. So he goes and he begins to talk about how this thorn that was given to him because of the many revelations that the Lord had allowed him to have, to give to him to keep him humble. Well, he says about the thorn, the weakness, there's, scholars have studied this in and out. There's, we don't really know exactly what the thorn was, but he says, I pleaded with the Lord about this 3 times. And what I thought was interesting is when I looked at that word pleaded, it's in the Greek is parakaleo. It's actually a legal term, and it means it refers to believers bringing up evidence that stands in the court of God. So what I took from that was like Paul was literally pleading with God, bringing evidence before God as to why this thorn should be removed, why he shouldn't be dealing with this. He lets us in on the story. He says, I prayed about it 3 times, but God said to him, because Paul was a praying man, he prayed and God responded. And he didn't respond with removing it, but he said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness. So God's answer to Paul for him wanting the thorn to be removed, it was no, but you will experience the power of my grace. You will experience the power of my grace because my grace is sufficient, more than enough, essentially. So when you're weak, you'll experience the perfection of my power, because this sufficient grace could only be experienced in weakness. That's what the scripture says, for my power is perfected in weakness. And I also want to share this part. There was this mind change or shifting for Paul. He says, therefore, and which means as a result, so Paul's whole disposition there was a paradigm shift, because of the sufficiency of God's grace, God giving him this answer, which Paul received. He says, now my mind is shifted from wanting it removed to realizing like there's a gladness that I have, and I boast all the more about this affliction that they were trying to use to disqualify him, because Christ's power resides in him to do his will. And so what they were trying to use to disqualify Paul, the Apostle Paul is saying this very thing that you're trying to use to disqualify me, I'm getting to experience and boast about the power of God residing in me despite this weakness or affliction in my body. Now, what does this mean for us? Or how do we respond to this? Well, for one, we have to understand sometimes we want God to remove things and take things away that God is using as a means to change our mind about him, about his faithfulness, and to experience him and his power in a way that we wouldn't if he took that thing away from us or allowed something to be changed. So we have to be willing to have this type of heart and mindset to say, God, I'm praying for this. I'm making a defense. I'm bringing evidence as to why I think, or why, you think that God should remove this or allow this. And when God says, no, I'm gonna let it stay. But what I am gonna do, I'm gonna give you more than enough of my grace, more than enough of whatever it is that we need, so that we can then change our mind to gladly boasting about how, even though we have whatever it is that's going on in our life, God is being faithful to give us the power, the grace, the confidence, the courage, the boldness, or whatever it is to do His will and to represent Him. I think that's a beautiful thing. And we respond that way. We respond by accepting God's answer, by knowing that no matter what it is, God's will is best for us, even if it's not what we initially prayed for. All right. I hope I shared something in this short time that you can take with you, and even possibly share with someone else. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment. Engage with us here. We'd love that. But as I always say, no matter what you've experienced in the past, what you may be going through right now, or even experience in the future, always remember, there's hope. You better find that rock, stand on it, be strong.